It's another edition of Time About the Movies, and today we're taking a look at the films of November 29th, 1996. Well, technically November 27th, because all these movies opened up on Wednesday, because this was, of course, Thanksgiving week. But we got 4 movies to look at, so let's go ahead and jump into it. We'll start off with the biggest new release of the weekend, and as, of course, Glenn Close starring as Cruella de Vil in Disney's live-action adaptation of 101 Dalmatians.
I pronounce that they be man and wife.
They're here. The puppets are here.
Walt Disney Pictures presents 101 Dalmatians. Your father, Pongo! They were totally irresistible,
We must call this one lucky.
unbelievably precious, dipstick, and had a style all their own. Wizard. Which is all Cruella de Vil ever wanted.
I live for fur. I worship fur. Put them in a bag. I'll take them with me now. The puppies are not for sale.
This Thanksgiving,
Just wait. Oh, get even. Oh, my goodness.
it's all right, Landry. We're progressing. The battle is on.
That's those puppies.
Walt Disney Pictures presents
Oi! Get out of my truck.
101 ways to bring in the holidays. Glenn Close.
Leaving that.
Extend length. 101 Dalmatians.
Fittingly enough, this is coming out around the same time The Little Mermaid's coming out, the new live-action remake, which actually just came out last week, and I saw it. It was actually really good. And but you still have those people. You still have those people that still complain about Disney's live-action remakes now. Nobody ever really says anything about the ones they did back in the day, because this was actually the second one they did, based off of one of their Disney classics. Of course, the first one being The Jungle Book in 1994, which was an alright movie for what it was, and then this movie, which ended up becoming a huge hit. I mean, it was one of the biggest hits that came out that year, and it was actually the 6th highest grossing film of the year, and actually led to several things, including, of all things, a huge shot up sales of Dalmatian sales, people just buying Dalmatian puppies because of what they saw from this movie, which actually got animal rights organizations really pissed off, because they make the argument that being ill-prepared to take care of for a relatively difficult breed of dog past puppyhood, many of these new owners eventually surrender their animals to pounds, which many dogs end up being euthanized, which, that's a pretty intense that's a pretty intense conversation to say. That's a pretty intense thing to say, is what I'm trying to say. But, I mean, they might have a point on it, but then again, these guys usually get upset about anything. I mean, they got mad about Jackass Forever for doing something similar with, now I can't remember what the controversy was. They made the argument basically saying that they were cruel to animals, which I mean, the American Humane Society monitored the animal action in this, as they usually do. So, yeah, PETA doesn't know what the hell they're talking about. They're also the ones that always say that Punxsutawney Phil needs to be retired and have an animatronic groundhog be used. It's just like, shut the hell up. I mean, seriously. But I'm getting too negative here, and there's nothing really negative to say about this movie. And, you know, honestly, this is probably one of my favorite live-action adaptations Disney has ever done. I mean, I love the original 101 Dalmatians. This is probably the most contemporary animated movie they did before Oliver and Company came around. And, you know, I love the original 101 Dalmatians, and I think they did a really good job of making this movie as close to the original, but also doing some things that are very different from the original film. This is still taking place in a modern setting. The casting overall in this is really good. They did a really good job of casting all these people. Glenn Close as Cruella de Vil is just pitch perfect. She just works in this role so well. I mean, I don't know if you can get anybody else in this role back in 1996 that would have done a better job than she does in this movie. But in addition to that, Jeff Daniels, Jolie Richardson, I think they do a very good job in the role of Roger and Anita. Joan Plowright playing the nanny is very good. Jasper and Horace, such good casting. Hugh Laurie, of course, from Dupree House, Mark Williams. That's really, really phenomenal casting they did here. They did a really good job of getting people that look about as close to the original film as you can get, and I like the direction they took with it. They didn't do They didn't do what Disney movies nowadays do, live action remakes, I should say, and have the animals talking. It's everybody's in complete silence. You hear complete silence is maybe an understatement, but they don't talk. Is basically what I'm trying to say here. But you still hear them barking, and you still hear them making what normal dogs do, like noises that dogs usually do. And surprisingly, Frank Welker did some of these creature sounds for this movie, which I think is kind of interesting here, because you really would expect a whole lot to do with these dogs in here, but then you realize that they're actually used animatronic creations from Jim Henson's Creature Shop here, and I gotta say, they did a pretty good job of making you believe that they did a good job of not making you think of one thing or another. Like, every one of these dogs in this movie, they all kind of look the same. Like, I know they use some CGI, and I know they use some animatronics here, but they did a pretty good job of hiding it in here. If there are some complaints I would have about the movie per se, is that there are times, especially towards the end of the movie, where it gets where those effects really start to show their date. Like, there's a part in the end where the dogs are escaping, and they go down this little pipe that's from the top of the roof, and there's one scene where the dog is going down the pipe, and you see it inside the pipe going down the and then there's a part where the legs are up in the air, and it looks so cartoonish. Like, you would almost think that they took a CGI version of Pluto and just, instead of making him yellow, they just made him white and put the dark spots on them. It's that bad looking, and there's a couple of those in this, there's a couple of those CG effects that don't really work all that well here, and you can also make the argument that the third act is kind of very Home Alone-ish. Like, it kind of feels like something out of Home Alone, which makes sense because this is John Hughes that wrote this, and, sadly, this is kind of what John Hughes was doing in the latter half of his career. Most of his movies were following the Home Alone formula. Sometimes they ended up working out pretty well. They were kind of fun. I mean, I still love Baby's Day Out, and, I still love this, even though I will say that it definitely shows in here that it's very Home Alone-esque in the final climax of the movie, but I'll give it credit, though. It did do something a little bit different. It didn't do the same thing that it did in the first movie, which the first movie, with the original animated movie, is still a ton of fun. It's always going to be the one film that stands out in the series, but they did a real damn good job of modernizing this for a new generation and giving it to the live-action treatment that actually does show a reason to exist. I think they did a very good job of adapting this into the modern times. I mean, this is a film that I go back to every once in a while because I just love the way it's set up. I love the way that they did everything, the casting, the comedy overall. It's still a very fun movie. I love this series, the 101 Dalmatians series as a whole. Most of the stuff they've done with this, I've actually kind of enjoyed, and this is probably my second favorite thing from the series besides the original movie. And I really love this movie. It's one of my favorite Disney live-action adaptations, and it's a pretty damn good movie. I highly recommend checking it out if you love the original 101 Dalmatians. You definitely get your money's worth with this film. So, that's 101 Dalmatians. Now let's move on to the next movie, and that is Daniel Day-Lewis and Winona Ryder in The Crucible.
Whatever sin it is, you love me yet.
The New York Times says The Crucible is impassioned and vigorous. Seductively exciting, raves Rolling Stone. Newsweek calls it passionate and moving. Entertainment Weekly says The Crucible casts a more powerful spell than ever.
I never dreamed any of this for you. I wanted you, was all.
Daniel Day-Lewis, Winona Ryder.
She needs to dance with me on my wife's grave. God help me, I lost it.
The Crucible, rated PG-13. Now playing in New York and Los Angeles. Opens Friday in select cities.
So The Crucible is based off the story by Arthur Miller. It's set during the Salem witch trials. It follows a group of teenage girls who accidentally get caught conjuring love spells in the woods and forced to lie that Satan has invaded them and accused several innocent people of witchcraft. It's got Daniel Day-Lewis and Winona Ryder, also Paul Scofield, Joan Allen, Bruce Davison, some notable names in here. It's been a long time since I've seen this movie. I saw it about maybe 10 years ago. During that time when I was trying to see as many movies as I can, and I don't remember too much about it. I do remember kind of enjoying. I remember coming out of it going, I'm glad I saw the film, but it's been a long time since I've seen this movie, and I think it still holds up pretty from what I remember. I mean, Daniel Day-Lewis usually will turn in a good performance. Winona Ryder was still pretty good around this time, and I don't doubt she had a good performance in here too. But like I said, it's been a long time since I've seen this movie. And from what I remember for it, I remember it being pretty good. I don't know if that still holds up after all these years. Maybe I'll go ahead and check it out again sometime in the near future. But from what I remember from it, it was a pretty decent film. I never read the play that this was based off of, so I don't know if it's how much it sticks to the original story. But like I said, saw it over a decade ago. Thought it was all right back then. I don't know if it still holds up, but it probably still does. So I wish I had some more for you on that one, but that's The Crucible. Let's go ahead and take a look at the next movie, and that is Billy Bob Thornton in Sling Blade.
The heart of America comes a new voice in movies. Writer, director, and actor Billy Bob Thornton. And now he's nominated for 2 Academy Awards, including Best Actor. This is the film Time magazine calls an American classic. A masterpiece. Powerful and original. Absolutely unforgettable. It's one of the best movies ever. Sling Blade, rated R, now playing in theaters everywhere.
This was essentially the breakout movie for Billy Bob Thornton. Of course, this was based off of a story he did from a one-man show. He not only stars as the character of Carl Childers, he also wrote the film, he directed the film, and he actually won an Academy Award for writing the script for this. And you can start to see why here. I mean, this is a really damn good movie that really showcased why he's such a great actor. I say was, like he's dead or not, but he's still very much alive. Can't remember the last thing he was in, honestly. I'd have to double check it, but I actually have not heard his name in a while. Now I'm kind of curious. Okay, he has been in some stuff. He's been in the Amazon series Goliath. He was the narrator in Fargo. He was also on 1883, Harley Quinn. The last thing I remember seeing him in terms of a movie was Bad Santa 2, which is completely unnecessary. It's not a very good sequel to the original Bad Santa, which we'll get to eventually, but he has been busy. He's done stuff like London Fields, A Million Little Pieces, The Gray Man. He's in Devil's Peak, and he's going to be in Electric State. But like I said, other than that, though, it's been a while since I've seen him in a movie. But a movie that I have an interest in seeing, I should say. But regardless, this is still a really damn good movie, and it works because he plays his character so well. He makes his character very relatable. You can definitely get a connection with him immediately. And he's got a really good cast around him. Dwight Yoakam's very good in here, so is J.T. Walsh, Lucas Black, Robert Duvall. John Ritter in this movie is really damn good. I was really surprised at how much that he gave into this performance here. This is one of his last really good performances before his untimely death about 7 years later, but he really gives this very good, uncharacteristic performance from John Ritter. Like, you don't expect a performance like this from him, but he really does give it his all here. He's probably my second favorite thing about this movie is his performance in this, but the movie is Billy Bob Thornton's baby, and you can definitely see why that is. He really puts his all into it. It's just such an amazing film. I don't think I have to say much more about this movie. If you have not seen Sling Blade, you are doing yourself a major, major disservice. I highly recommend checking it out if you haven't. So, with that said, on to the last movie, and that is Zero Kelvin.
Deilige Henrik. Jeg ville at du skulle få med deg dette brevet som et minne. Slik at du tenker på meg, slik som jeg kommer til å tenke på deg. Tilgi meg at jeg var så avvisende da du foreslo forlovelsen. Men vår kjærlighet skal være fri, og da behøves ingen forlovelse. Du forstår sikkert. Jeg elsker deg for din mildhet og sjelfullhet.
So this is a Norwegian psychological thriller film. Stellan Skarsgård is also in this movie, but it's about the tensions between 3 men at an isolated Greenland trapping station in the 1920s. And usually those make for the really good movies. Movies that takes place in this isolated area in the middle of a major snowstorm. There's been so many good movies like that. The Thing, of course, the John Carpenter thing from the 80s. Misery, great movie. Dead of Winter, which is a very underrated movie with Mary Steenburgen and Roddy McDowall from 1987. Phenomenal movie. If you have not seen that movie, definitely check that one out. I kind of want to get a physical toy boat. I kind of want to get a physical copy of that at some point. I think it is available on Blu-ray through Shout Factory, but I like those type of movies. Snowpiercer is probably another good example, even though that takes place more on a train in the middle of a snowstorm. Pretty much anything in the middle of a snowstorm in terms of thrillers, I will watch, because usually those are some really damn good movies. There have been some stinkers, but that's my favorite type of thriller movie that takes place in the middle of a major snowstorm. And this one looks like it could be a very interesting thriller. I mean, it has the pieces that I like to it. I don't really know too much about the film itself, so I can't really say if it's good or not, but these are the type of films I usually love, so I'm really definitely very curious to see if this actually turns out to be pretty good or not. So that is Zero Kelvin. So with that said, that wraps up another edition of Time About the Movies. Next time we meet, we head into the last month of 1996. The first weekend of December with only 4 weeks to go. We've got 3 movies to look at, including Sylvester Stallone in Daylight, Everyone Says I Love You, and Losing Chase. So we'll look at those movies next time. We're almost done with another year, so we're about 4 weeks away from getting into 1997. Episode-wise, I should say. But with that said, thank you very much for watching, and if you want to see more videos like this, please hit the playlist on the next page, check out the previous episode, and I will see you guys tomorrow for another episode. So thank you very much for watching. I'll see you next time, and until then, as always, take care.